got 3 o'clock yet? No.
And you got 30 seconds. Looks like you don't have a real audience either. Yeah. Are we live?
I haven't been able to tell though, because it doesn't show up who's watching.
It just shows how many.
It does, it hasn't been.
Yeah, yes, it has. Yeah,
I haven't seen that.
yeah. During our meeting, there's like 2 people watching. All right. No one wants to watch us anymore. We're boring. All right, here we go.
Okay, it's 3 o'clock. We'll call this meeting to order. And everybody, hopefully you're recuperating from Christmas. You had a Merry Christmas.
Thank you.
Item 2 would be committee or public comments. Do we have any public comments?
No public out there, huh?
Okay. Item 3, Indian Wells Valley Groundwater Authority. This is just an overview of anything that may have happened at last month's meeting. I'll just give a brief update. There wasn't a whole lot going on. We did go through the board rotation. It was the water district's turn to be the vice chair. They elected to skip over us and not make us the vice chair this year. I opposed that, but they did go through with that, so that's where we're at from. We are just going to be a member of the board and not serve as a chair or vice chair. They did also renew a contract with RGS for another year for general manager, secretary of the board and stuff like that, just for management. Then also they did an amendment with Capital Corps. They gave them kind of they said it wasn't a change order. I asked that question, but it was an increase to last year's contract because it was short, so they had to make additional money available for them in the budget, so it was just a budget adjustment. So they did that. And also we approved the GM giving her authorization to sign documents with BLM for right-of-ways. They used the example up in Rose Valley for drilling a new well, and there was some permitting work that had to be done, and she was gonna be able to sign that instead of having to come to the board.
Didn't they also increase the amount she can sign for?
Yeah, they did that. I believe they did
Previous-
that previous month to 50,000.
50,000.
They used the water district's example is what they said in their meeting. So, the other thing that they did, Stetson, they went over his rates and he did ask for a small rate increase, so that was approved also, so. And basically that was it. It was a fairly uneventful. There was some confrontation on our report that came out. And
Right, of course.
we had some back and forth on that, and so there was some differences of opinions there. Some comments were made that I didn't appreciate, but that doesn't really matter, I guess I'm finding out.
You gotta have a leather skin up
Yeah,
there.
it is what it is, so, but those comments were made.
Yeah.
And my opinion differed than theirs, so, and they did say that if our new science was reviewed, that Stetson said that they would look at it. So I'm optimistic, I guess, would be the word.
Yeah, it's just when it gets turned over to them or how it gets turned over to them. And I think anything that goes to them, a stipulation shall be made that it's strictly a technical thing, not a lawyer thing.
It is
Yeah.
strictly technical, and then it got, a lot of accusations were made that we weren't releasing and why weren't we releasing. But I want the public to know we've been waiting on documents also, the DRI report, model, and they've never released the model or anything to us that we've asked for too. So there's a lot that's not been released, both sides because of legal, so.
And there's some information, George, that information you got from DWR, that's public, correct? Is that on their website, or how did you get involved with that? About some responses on who's operating the pipeline and water treatment and.
I generally believe that those comments were specific to the preliminary design review for the pipeline.
Maybe public then.
I cannot speak to whether they've been posted as public comments yet, but they, certainly we were courtesy copied because of a number of those comments would affect how we would do business and operate. And so I will refrain from discussing at this point in time until I know whether they're public or not.
Yeah, and and the reason I'm asking is maybe something that you want to bring forward to the workshop, when we're talking with the committee who's trying to put together total costs for this. So if you can find out by then whether it's something we can bring up, because I think that committee, which is still David and Mallory, need to know that. And so we can figure costs for that.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think we probably, I submitted an email with some basic comments on that preliminary design review with a few comments. I think probably might be a good idea to take the few comments that I did submit via email and maybe add some more based on the letter from DWR, and sort of put our own set of comments together comprehensively on the design. You can submit them at whatever stage you want. We can
I
maybe
was
hit 30% or
Yeah, I
whatever.
have to believe
Jackson.
it's an open document.
Those comments were from the State Water Resources
I'm sorry,
Control.
I always say one or the
Not
other.
DWR.
It's SW,
Oh, sorry.
not DW, it's SW, State Water Resources.
State Water Resources.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was
state-
kind of weird because the letter said both. It was weird.
Doesn't
Mentioned both agencies, I
DWR
believe.
report to State Water Resource Board?
No, they're two separate entities.
Are they completely separate
Yes.
entities?
It's the Division of Drinking Water of the State Water Resources Control Board.
Oh, okay.
That was a Jesse Dollywall letter.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Our managing
Keep
engineer.
correcting me on that one, eventually it'll sink in. I'm just,
Do you know if those are public or not?
but it wouldn't be.
I think anyone could request it with a public records request, so I don't see why not.
Yeah,
It's probably best that we not discuss it until
yeah.
our board meeting and we discuss
I mean, it
it.
wasn't
Well, if you
any-
can find out by the-
anything earth shattering or
Yeah,
anything, so,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, I just see dollar signs when I see it. That weren't anticipated. But let's see if we can bring that to the workshop under discussion of things like that.
Yeah, do we want to consider backing up? We did have a member of the public show up, and just in case they had a comment, is it okay?
Yeah, he may want to comment on something that we're actually on the agendas where he could make a comment back, unless it's just general comment. We're on the Groundwater Authority. So, okay, so we will call for public comment on the Groundwater Authority as soon as we finish our discussion then.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything else that was,
No, the only,
Any big
that was the
rel-
only thing that was discussed. They did discuss, I think they mentioned the court hearing, and that was held Friday. And
right.
I don't know if anybody watched that, but it was,
It was pretty interesting.
I think it was pretty interesting.
Yes, and there's no reason, of course, that's all public as well,
That
anybody
is
can watch
public.
it. And I liked what I saw. I mean, the judge upheld his ruling
Yes.
without prejudice,
Without prejudice.
which means they can still address issues, but it doesn't mean it'll hold up anything else.
No.
And they did, and they are filing their petition for continuation of the hearing to work up the numbers, to have the scientific presentations. Yeah, which I think is good.
Yeah, so I think that was all open and everything was open to that, so.
Yeah. it
Okay,
pretty much
there's
is.
no other comments from the board?
No.
If we have public comment on the Groundwater Authority?
Yeah, Mike Neal, just to clarify in my own mind, I think I understood the reporting on the issue of the groundwater's lawyer representing small pumpers in the valley. Did the judge say, no, you don't get to do that?
No, he did not.
Yes, he did.
What he said was he denied it without prejudice, and he gave the Water District 30 days to come back and tell them if we wanted to. I guess the main objection was,
I can correct that. I mean, not correct it, but clarify it. Basically, what he found he made decisions on three things. One is additional posting requirements and to form the group. The second one is the representative of the group, in meaning the non-legal representative, Don Decker. And the third one was the legal representative of Keith Lemieux. His judgment on that was he denied all of it with prejudice. But he did make it clear that he did not agree at all with the GA representing the pumpers. And I believe as far as the Don Decker issue goes, he goes, well, if they really want him to talk for him, they can. But he overruled, or not overruled, but he ruled on the fact that he doesn't want the GA's lawyer representing that, if a group is even formed. Okay.
yeah, I believe what he stated was if Mr. Decker wanted to come down to court to testify, he
Right.
could
He
drive
can-
down.
he can testify.
And then the Groundwater Authority said he was not healthy enough to make that trip.
So
Yeah.
is what they
Wow.
stated to the
I'm sorry to
judge.
hear that.
And the other part of it, just sort of clarification, what the judge is looking for is that the U.S. attorney is happy that everybody's been notified.
Correct.
And
Okay.
so that's the biggest stumbling block. They just want to make sure that everybody had an opportunity to be notified and proof of that. That's it.
And,
Okay.
and so they're assuming there's around 3,000 that
Right.
they did not get return receipts from. So we have a decision to make
And how that's going to happen.
Right.
on how that's going to happen.
Well, the good thing, like I said before, Lemieux not being able to represent the small pumpers is a big plus for the small pumpers as far as I'm concerned. 'Cause I have years of experience seeing Lemieux in action, and I would not be happy to have him represent me as a class if I was a small pumper. So I think that's good. That's a very good thing. As far as the GA and the latest study, the basic results have been announced by the district and so forth. As you probably both know, or all three of you know, watching the council, here you have, once again, a mayor who declares he really doesn't know anything about water. But, well, this study's old data, and so I had to remind them that a major part of the study was maybe 2 years old. And so I'll ask him, do you think 2 years old is old data? Just another instance of them, once again, trying to throw shade on the water district and any efforts that the water district's making to, help out the water users in the valley. At least they stayed true to form since pretty much day one. And, they thumb their nose at their major source of funding agency and, anything they could do. And you heard a little kind of trying to backtracking attempts at the last meeting, but, feeble backtracking attempts on their previous, this is just old data. We don't need to even worry about that. They just want it, the GA wants it their way, and they don't appreciate the district representing the water users in the valley and trying to do right by them. They want the pipeline for whatever reason, whoever's pushing them in the background, they want the pipeline, they want it bad for any reason they can drum up. And it's not right. I've been saying that since the day one, and they need to be stopped in their tracks pretty much at this point. And I've outlined how that can be made to be happen, and hopefully that'll be done sometime in the next year.
All right, thank you, Mr. Neal. We appreciate your comments. Okay, any other public comments? All right, we'll move to item 4, future LADWP aqueduct water releases.
That's going to be covered. We're going to cover that again during the workshop.
I think we should just,
We're going to discuss it, and, there's a couple possibilities there that I think George and I talked about that are going to go on that. So I don't know that we need to beat it to death here, but we do know that if any other water is released, that we need, we need to jump on this and find out what we're going to do about it. And I believe there are two objects that we're going to, two type of things that we're going to go on the workshop, including your suggestion of shallow well, somehow kind of shallow well. I don't know what kind of injection it would be, but or just let it flow down to the hole in the ground. But that's going to be discussed.
yeah, and I agree. I think we should discuss that and probably these next 3 items, unless anybody has an update on them, but we're going to discuss these at the workshop.
Right. If you want to move on to 5, the same thing there. Recycled water is going to be discussed at the workshop as well, which is what is the date? 12th? 12th, yeah, of January.
Yes.
Coming up. So I don't know, there's a lot more to say about those items.
So if anybody has any comments on 4 or 5,
Okay.
okay?
Just based on what I just heard, the 12th workshop is what time? Do you have a time?
At 9, I believe it's at 9.
Yeah.
9 o'clock,
Yeah.
okay, because may or may not be able to be there. And item 5 in looking at recycled water based on recent developments, that probably needs to be kind of put it on the shelf and kind of think about it a little bit, but doesn't appear now, like I said, if you really believe the results of this study you're announcing to the public, that, that there's an expensive source of water there. It's up to now. Now, I just saw an article, I don't know if I forwarded it to staff or not, but there's newer technologies for cleaning water outside of RO, and they're using, graphene-based fibers and things like that. I'd have to go dig around unless you guys are already aware of it. So there are technologies, coming down the pipe that we might be able to recycle the wastewater at less cost than the, current $2,000 plus an acre foot, which is, that's pretty prohibitive for just about any use. And the only possibility might be don't filter it so much and sell it to Searles Valley that, they can use stuff that's pretty brackish. So that's all I have to say on that.
Okay, and I'd like to make a comment back to you on that. I agree with a lot of what you said, but I do want to state that I do 100% believe in the science that the water district has worked out. But I also believe that we don't want to just end with brackish or with recycled water, because there are means that we could do with the recycled water inexpensively to where we could use it and put it to use somewhere else. So I don't want to just drop it, but I do 100% believe in the science. So
Keep in mind that the state is mandating
Yes.
as well. It won't be long, the state is going to require anybody that has a waste treatment plant that they use the recycled water. That's not far away. And I know supposedly they put money aside, a lot more money aside for this type of thing. But however, since the state is 68 billion in the hole now, I'm not sure we're going to see a lot of money coming out of them. But I agree with Chuck that even if the final answer is to, advance treat it and re-inject, it may be too expensive. But it may be that at some midpoint, there's something we can do with it. And that's what we're going to talk about at the workshop.
So I will also, I'll add that there is another option on the table. Newly released state guidelines allow direct potable reuse. I don't know if anybody in the public would be vastly in favor of that, and I expect it would be considerably more expensive than re-injection, but it's actually, there's a regulatory framework to do it, and it is at least legal now, where before it wasn't. And it involves treating the water from the wastewater treatment plant to a standard and blending it. And there's special certifications and a whole lot of other stuff. But it's a brand new rule. And at some point, certainly the state is saying that this is something that's going to need to be a component of sustainability in the future for the state, at least. So that's a new thing on the table. And we haven't done a lot of research into it because it is new. But as you would imagine, it's probably, as new technology always is expensive.
Well, plus people are already talking about it. They're calling it toilet to glass.
Yeah.
And people actually accepting that.
I don't think I could accept
Yeah, a
that,
lot
to
of
be
people just won't
perfectly
accept
honest
it,
with you.
and I just can't imagine that, oh, by the way, we're going to mix your toilet water in with everything.
Let me make a comment on that. So like, if you live in New Orleans,
I have.
you get your water from the Mississippi River, ask yourself, of the 100 or so cities upstream from you, how many times has the water that gets to New Orleans been pulled in to a water treatment system, flushed down the toilet, treated, put back in the Mississippi River, down to the next town, pulled in? So
Come on, you're talking
it
about
is something-
Southerners that eat nutria and crawfish. They don't think about, when I live down there, they don't
But
think about that.
it goes through 100 different treatment plants before it gets to New Orleans. So I think it happens on a scale that people don't want to think
Yes.
about, but it's actually, it's going on today.
Well, we'll let them live in New Orleans.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move to item 6, brackish water study. Is there any new information on that?
Yeah,
from
George, have
Renee
you
or-
talked to anybody that's involved
George?
with the project?
I believe we're in the closeout process. The contract ends at the end of this year. I believe we'll have a discussion topic about whether we are going to invest additional financial resources into this study. I think the recommendation is likely to be no, because the Navy has been pretty adamant about not allowing access to the places within their boundaries where brackish water might be feasible.
Yeah, and I'm hoping again that maybe that information from that study, if we somehow find somebody who could work with the Navy, say, here's the information, here's what you got, it may be something they want to do themselves. And if they do it themselves, then they probably won't have a problem mining the brackish water from their own areas out there. And it takes them off of our aquifer. So I don't know how we proceed with that, but George, I'm sure when you guys are going to be talking more as a group, I believe, and you might ask them, what is the recommendation from the group on where we head to next? And is there anybody that's willing to work with the Navy on what we know so far, that maybe it's a project they want to do? With the political climate now and the budget climate right now, I don't know where any of that'll go, but
Yeah, and it's going to be a cost priority for the district as well, about where we want to spend our own resources, where we think we're going to actually get results too. So something to consider for the future workshop.
Okay, item 8, alternate water resources. Any comments on that?
that's the sub-basin, right, the wells we're
Yeah.
talking about. Again, I think, George, correct me if I'm wrong, that's on the workshop as well, which is,
Yes.
yeah.
I will just want to make one comment that I thought was interesting. I went back and read I'll call it the percolation study that they did on the Indian Wells Valley, and it's posted on the GA's website. And one of the things I noticed at the end is they did say that while percolation here closer to Ridgecrest is not terribly feasible, it did say that up in the El Paso Basin, there are places where, percolation would be more than possible. So when you talk about LA aqueduct releases and stuff, and cheap ways of getting into the aquifer, those, I think it's important to read those reports and understand that it didn't say there's nowhere. It did, but it did say that the more likely places are up there in that area. So I think that's worth just noting in general, that we understand what that study said.
I don't want to drop it. I think it's a matter of priorities and money that's available.
Yep.
Because let's say that we were to have a well up there, I believe that the elevation would be such that we could get it right into our own aquifer,
Yeah, the water table up there tends to be something like 400 or 500 feet higher than the water table elevation here across that fault. And so, yeah, so
Right.
it's a pretty significant difference in,
And rainy seasons, that all goes into Fremont Valley.
yeah, so,
That's something we'd like to capture before it does that.
yeah, so that's another discussion about where we want to invest, money to study and actually, yeah, that'll be part of that discussion in the workshop.
But it's really not new water. It's just taking advantage of not losing the water that's spilling
Well, it's
up there.
water that we're not using.
That we're not
in my
using,
opinion.
yeah,
It's
well,
going the other direction.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, if this was the height of, before it starts spilling, you want to keep it just below that. So you're capturing water that really, I guess you can call it new water type of thing. But I know that Fremont, about 6 or 8 years ago, tried to, they tried to take that portion and put it in their aquifer, yeah.
They did. Okay, well, then we'll just leave it on there and we'll discuss that at the
The
board workshop.
yeah.
Well, I think the other thing to consider there, I'll just make one final comment, is, the groundwater sustainability plan talks about, sort of redistributing where wells are at, and, if there really is, their concern really is mitigating these shallow well impacts. If we were drawing water from up there, it would certainly mitigate shallow well impacts, which could also buy us more time to implement stuff. So it could be one of those options that's looked at in the perspective of how much time does it give us to reach the sustainability goals we want to get to.
I agree. It will alleviate cones of depression if we were pumping in another area, so
Yep.
it's a possibility to look at. Okay, any future agenda items?
Nope, I don't have anything.
The only one I have is I wanted to discuss at the board meeting, so we need to make sure we add that on the board meeting, would be changing this meeting to another date instead of this. Okay. I'd like to add it to the board meeting so we
Yeah.
can get it handled before the workshop.
Yeah,
That way
because.
we could get it agendized and get it done.
And I don't want to take up the time of the workshop. I mean, if you saw, there was a lot of stuff on there anyway, so George is going to have it moved to a regular meeting. It shouldn't take a long discussion. I'd like to see it go on this day.
Which day's that? The admin exec?
Yeah.
I would be great with that. That way
Yeah.
it's done and over with on Wednesday, and it will save staff time, us time, everybody, because we're going from one meeting to the next instead of setting aside
That's going to be my.
today, so, okay. If there's no other comments then, we will adjourn at 3:23.